The call of Jeremiah. Now, Jeremiah felt that God was calling him, and yet God's perspective was that his calling didn't just happen, but had existed even before he was born. Let me read to you some of those words from the first chapter of Jeremiah 4 through to verse 10. The word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Alas, sovereign Lord, I said, I don't know how to speak. I'm too young. But the Lord said to me, do not say I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send you and say whatever I command you. Don't be afraid of them, for I am with you and I'll rescue you, declares the Lord. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I've put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms to uproot and to tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Now, at first, Jeremiah resists the call. He says, I'm too young, I'm too inexperienced. How many people have felt that? That's something that was deep within him, this sense of reluctance because of those things that he felt he didn't have. And then God assures the prophet that he'll go with him. I'm sure that that's the truth that follows on in verses 7 to 8. Don't say I'm too young. You must go to everyone I send you and say whatever I do. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. So he's being asked to do something, but not asked to do it alone. And then God touches the lips of the prophet. Now, this is an important part in the calling of anyone, but it's particularly important in the prophets when they felt that God was somehow engaging with them. There's a real intimacy about these words. Then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, I've put my words in your mouth. God touches the lips of the prophet. Like Jesus Christ, Jeremiah would suffer a great deal due to his faithfulness in proclaiming a message that nobody wanted to hear. I mean, what a message he got. It wasn't easy. He wasn't said, go out there and everything will be nice, tell everybody they're good, tell everybody that the world's all going to turn out right. See, today I appoint you over the nations and kingdoms to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Now, there are positive elements of that message. That's what building and planting is all about. But there's some powerful aspects too. Jeremiah's call didn't come like a vision as it did to Isaiah, but by feeling that God was speaking directly to him. God knew, formed, consecrated, and appointed him to a task. And that task was a very real one and would make such a difference. And in the coming weeks, we're going to look at what that ministry was all about and what it meant in his day. Jeremiah was at a particular point in history. All of us have a context, and Jeremiah certainly had a context. And the context in which he ministered and which he was a prophet was a difficult time. And he told the people things were going to be difficult. He didn't have an easy message. And the message that he gave to them came directly out of this call. He never forgot his call. In all our lives, we have a purpose. As we heard Elizabeth talk about earlier, she's passionate about training. Training is so very, very important. That can't be removed from her because that's so much a part of her life. And so it is that Jeremiah had a passion, and his passion was to speak for God, wherever that was to be. Sometimes you'll find as you turn the pages and as we look over these coming weeks, sometimes he would speak that message simply with words. There are other times when there are actions that attend his words, when he realizes and shows exactly what it is to the people there that God was saying to them. His message sometimes was smooth, but very often it had a tough side to it. And people didn't like it. Not everybody thought Jeremiah was good, you know. He was rejected by many. And that's the point, that sometimes if you're going to follow God's way, if you're going to follow God's will, there will be times when what you say and what you do will not be received as easily as other things. But in the end, the word that God gives to us, whatever it is that God calls us to, there is a positive side to that. And always when Jeremiah is sharing the tough stuff, so it is that it leads us to a brighter future and to a place where he is. And God never left him. I think that's probably the most encouraging thing that I read in a passage like this on the calling of God in Jeremiah's life. God will never leave him, nor forsake him, abandon him. He'll always be with him, and what he promises, he will actually keep in his life. So Jeremiah, it's going to be great over these weeks to share more about him and to be able to share with you this one that was appointed by God.